So thank you, Diana. Really happy to be here. And this is a wonderful occasion. Wow, I'm sometimes just looking out and thinking I'm in a fairy tale. So welcome to the panelists. We are going to talk about multi-channel teams and how to set up multi-channel teams. And what are the successes and what are the opportunities. A little bit of introduction from my side. So as Diana said, I'm an email marketing consultant, although I like myself more as brand digital email marketing because it's more about cross-channel, really where the consumer is. And I have 10 years with Nike behind me where I built up email marketing, and I also work together with cross-channel teams. Right now we're trying to help various companies to also bring my experience and bring them to the next level based on cross-channel and email marketing. So that's really exciting. But I have three amazing people in the panel today. So I think we will have a great discussion about how teams should be set up. But first, I would like to ask you to introduce yourself and explain why you think cross-channel is important. Martin, would you like to start?
Yeah, sure. Hi, good morning. Martin Boschhuizen. I'm CMO at Helloprint. We are a platform for online print. Quite strong. We're a scale-up. And we'd like to, if you would like to compare us, we do the same as Vistaprint, for example, does. Only we have no production facilities at all. We are just a platform connecting demand and supply. And we try to do that all over the world. And we try to become the biggest world by doing that. So it's quite ambitious. Multi-channel is very interesting because we are doing things radically different than a few months before. I'm not that long on board. I've started in July, and I started hiring a lot of specialists, PPC specialists, social media affiliate specialists, email marketing specialists, because these were skills that were underutilized and underinvested in. We had a small team of growth hackers just trying to make things work. But they were not specialists, so I started hiring specialists, and I started to see the performance going down because they were very good at what they were focusing in silos. They were focusing on their own specialism. That didn't work good enough. So we turned it around. Can maybe still more in a few minutes, but that's what we're doing right now. Yeah.
Hello, introduction already done by Diana, thanks. I'm Wolf, Merlin Entertainment, so we run theme parks and visitor attractions across the globe. So we are in over 25, I think 26 countries by now. Cross-channel marketing, I think, has become more and more important. I think one of the main reasons for me is that I think we've been looking, as Martin just said, we've been often looking from the company side, and then what do we want to do? Actually looking at the other end of the chain, the consumer, who actually buys our products, buys our tickets. A consumer doesn't think in channels. The consumer doesn't think in an email marketing channel or a social channel. The consumer thinks about a brand or an experience. And I think that's why it's so important that we start doing the same thing and actually think how our consumers like to think and try to do everything as good as possible. People are using more and more devices at the same time. They watch TV, they're on their laptop time and on their mobile phone. Linking all of those dots together is really, really important.
All right. I'm Albert and I work for TNT FedEx, which I'm on a department, Digital, and that's a startup within a big corporate. And that's really exciting because for the first time in my life I work with experts. So before I worked for several corporates, and I was a little what you could call a lone wolf. I was the only one being busy with email marketing, CRM, with customer journeys. And that's difficult, that's really hard. And the previous speaker, he showed a picture about the decision process and that it goes all the way now. So 10 years ago, if you, as a consumer, would have made a decision, it was quite a linear process, but the reason for that was you would go to a shop and then get a salesperson to inform you about the product. And the switching costs were quite high because you had to go out of the shop, go to a magazine or somewhere else. And nowadays that's changed. So the switching is very easy for consumers, and companies still have difficulties to adapt to that. That's why cross-channel, in my opinion, is incredibly important. And honestly, a lot of companies are still not managing with that. And that has to do with what we're talking about now in this panel.
Yeah, thank you. So I think coming from a big organization, really the difficulty is when the silos are working separately from each other, the channel owners work separately from each other. And I was really surprised talking, for example, with Martin, as you also mentioned, Helloprint started with specialists, even though it's a smaller organization. I thought, oh, everybody already works together, it's in their mind that we have to have a connection between what we do. While I had to really struggle and find the people and the peers that we need to make this campaign together. So I'm really curious on what your experience is to make the right steps towards a cross-channel organization from a siloed organization. So Martin, would you like to start again?
Yeah, well, it is funny, isn't it? Because we're a small company. My marketing team is 22. Now total company's 150, including customer service. So it's not that big, but you see it. We saw it every day. Just people just focusing on their own channel, their own things. And even though they were in the same floor, they didn't have to go to another building to find their colleagues. But it just happens. It also happens because you let people focus on what they should do. Do this, send a lot of emails. Send a lot of emails, then we get a lot of revenue. And we try to turn around to look at. So you were asking about ingredients, how you make that work.
The steps, yes.
Yeah, and I think that the most important one we started is we were in the old days, half a year ago. We were giving people a lot of we failed to give people context of what we are actually doing, and that's what we changed. We started investing way more in telling people our own story, where we want to go to as a company, and it was surprising how little people actually knew about that. We as a management team had a very clear vision on where we want to go and how we want to reach it, but it was actually shocking to see how little everybody on the floor had the same shared vision on where we want to go. So that's the first thing. Context and not control. People free to do what they do. So I've basically, the new way of working, I've actually said nothing about to a team how they should work. They did it themselves. And that's, I think, the biggest part of success. The only, basically, the directive I gave them is that don't focus on channels, focus on the funnel itself. And I think that Evelyn also showed that it's about the journey that the customer makes where you should focus on and not on the channel per se. And that's the thing I gave them, really. And they adopted the pirate funnel, which may or may not be known to any of you, but working in the funnel and not right now and not on channels. And somebody is responsible for certain parts of the funnel, and it doesn't matter how he solves it. He solves problems that customers face or that we see the customers have in that part of the funnel. That's the biggest secret for success, that I think, because only then you let your channels go and you solve customer problems.
Yeah, that makes all sense. Would you like to add to that?
Yeah, I think on that one, I think, so what we've done, how we slightly changed it is, it's just setting the right objectives and the right goals for each teams. So I think where before, different teams had very different objectives sometimes. So the email marketing team would have objectives, their email opens and click-through rates, very focused on that. But actually now, while that still might be objectives and goals for them, we are now responsible for all online revenue that comes in. So it goes much beyond actually we can directly influence. It basically forces us to look into the whole customer journey and into every other channel. So in order to achieve that kind of revenue goal that we have, we need to work with the other teams and the other attractions. But I think it is I think one of the toughest one is getting the right people in. If I'm honest, I think the more junior you go, you can't expect people to have the knowledge in all of the channels. In the UK, we work across 13 different brands, in 32 attractions. So I can't have a junior manager expecting to have the knowledge of, you know, all of the different brands, all of the different channels, knowing what's going on. So that is, I think, staffing, I think, is a huge, I think, in that.
And it probably needs to come from the top. So if leadership,
Exactly.
as also Martin
Yes.
said, you recognize what the importance is
Yeah.
and then organize the teams that way, then
Yeah.
you're going to be more successful. Yeah, thank you. Would you like
All right,
to add?
I like to add something, or ask something actually. Who read the book of Mintzberg about organizational structures? Yeah, so the first version is more than 25 years ago. And if you read that first version, it's a hooray for organizations that have silos, because silos have also certain advantages. So one of the advantages is that you have a group of people working together in one place and doing the same stuff, the same aim. So that's the advantages. And what happens if all organizations are organized like that? They simply focus on the channels that earn them a lot of money. So if you're a newcomer, relatively newcomer, like email, like CRM, there is nothing. There's no proof. There's no turnover and profit yet. So if you're the lone wolf that starts there, you're the only one basically, and you have to fight all the time to get that attention. And the problem with silo is that it's it's filled with people with the same ID. So if you want to read Crosschannel, consumer focused, because the consumer is creating demand on the channel where he wants to look and switch all the time, he must become consumer centric, and not only in the marketing department, but especially also sales departments and other departments. So they must be in the center and work from that. And that's the way to do cross-channel in the right way, I think.
Yeah, so you already mentioned a couple of departments. So who do you think would be most important to work together outside what you already mentioned? Or even if it's outside of marketing, sales, and so on, what do you think would be the right teams to be successful in cross-channel marketing?
So a consumer, we cannot control their thoughts. We cannot control their IDs and their behavior. What we can do is learn as much as possible from them. And that's basically data. So in my opinion, if you put the consumer central, you put the department central, and make sure that you have what I call a data democracy. So the owner of the data is the data department, but all other units, including service and sales, they are connected and they have access to, well, all data, but a data that is really relevant for them. So behind the steering wheel, there will most of the time be a data person seeing whether IDs from different departments are good and making connections between the departments. So an example of that is, for example, when I worked for Boschhuizen, we generated a lot of product at a certain moment, and we noticed that a vacuum cleaner, 1.5 years old, got really low ratings. And we asked around a little bit, asked consumers why they gave low ratings after 1.5 years. And it was simply because the connection between the vacuum cleaner and the, how do you call it, it was plastic, and plastic wears off quite fast. So me and the department I worked in, we went on a 1.5 year journey inside the organization to find out why we have a plastic attachment point. And the reason was very simple, because in the factories they focus on cost control, and metal is more expensive than plastic. And that's one of the reasons why you can never be consumer-centric as one department, but you must be through the entire organization.
Yeah, one thing we're doing right now. So I think everybody will recognize the problem that development capacity, IT development capacity is also too low. And usually, especially if you really want to change small things in the flow or in a certain part of the funnel, we noticed that a lot of time our requests were being downgraded. I was looking at them, why were they were downgraded? I can't even disagree, because there's more important things to be done. So things we're doing right now is basically hire our own development capacity, so we can set our own priorities apart from always having to go to IT. So we're creating that multi-functional team that is, and I think that's very important for making things work as well. And as Albert said, our marketing analytics is at the core of what we do. But that's more trying to reveal all the data to everybody, so everybody can see and act on the inside stuff.
So have a transparent dashboard and reporting.
Yeah, I like the word data democracy. Yeah, that's what we're trying to do as well.
Funny story, but we have decided last year, it was April last year, we merged IT and marketing. Wow. So I think for a lot of people that's probably like two things that could never go together. Yeah. But you know, Brexit is happening and Trump is in the White House, so you know, no one would have thought that. But yeah, IT and marketing last year. So we're now one team. Because overall we are an absolute marketing-driven company. You know, no one needs to go to a theme park. No one needs to go and go to an aquarium. You know, we're not selling milk or bread. We need to do our marketing because otherwise people won't come. And we did have the issues that marketing, especially with digital growth, had other priorities than the actual IT department. So we had goals to make the customer journey better by improved IT systems, ticketing systems, better systems that speak together. But you know, IT is active of running a company on stable IT systems and didn't have a revenue goal or anything behind it. So we've been able in 6 months kind of implement admission kiosks so people can touch screens and buy their tickets, especially in the London office, which increase directly per tickets, because every ticket just upsells you more products every time. So we see the direct impact on working together with IT directly in one team to kind of consumer journey a lot better.
Yeah, so it's a great example, and I think it's a very special example as well. Back to the learnings, I would be also curious, what other learnings did you encounter working cross-channel? Were there any pitfalls? Were there any difficulties that you ran into? And what would you suggest to the group, how to avoid them and how to overcome them?
I think it's a lot learning. So, I find myself sitting in meeting rooms with IT solution architects and people like that talk about how they develop the next API between two systems, and I just sit there and just make it work. Consumer needs to get an email or something. And it's that learning curve of actually understanding what the other people do, why they have different objectives. I think that's probably the biggest thing to overcome. But you can only do that by actually meeting with people and talking to them. And sometimes it's as simple as an office wall that you just need to get rid of, or introduce hot desking and people move around slightly. And as soon as you sit with other people, you automatically hear what they are, talk what they are working on, and might interest you, and that I think can help a lot. We used to always sit in the same desk, and yes, working with the same people, I think in a silo is good because you can push each other, you can learn, but then going out and sitting with people really helps. So that kind of learning curve of what other people actually do and align your focus on one was probably the biggest one.
Yeah, I had the same. It was really funny because it's surprising how people attach to their desk. Yeah. I never understood that. But people really start getting into panic mode if you say they're going to have to change their desks. And I is using that to a very large extent. I intentionally move people around, but get them out of their comfort zone and start working in a different way. And that's not because I want to hassle them, but I do the same myself. I give up my desk as well. I don't have a desk in the office. I just sit where there's room. And it's also a great way of people collaborating more or doing things differently or talking to people where you would otherwise never see. That was a meaningful lesson. But you should also lead by example, I think. You should not in a comfy office yourself and move people around. So it's a team effort, and you can really stimulate that by doing it. And I agree with you.
So Martin, that's awesome, I think. But there must be 50% of the employees at your office that like their own desk, that have a picture there of their wife or friend or man.
Yes.
So how do you tackle that? How do you?
Well, take your photo and move it to your new desk. It's as simple as that.
Simple as that.
It's interesting how that works, right? Because we're talking a little bit about matrix structures, that when there's the project, that you have experts from different specialisms and you combine them in a group. And it reminds me a little bit about when I joined Boschhuizen's household appliances, because there were two persons, my team leader, and she had great vision, and she worked out together with Michael Aal, who's here actually as an interim. He was working there. They worked out to attract consumers to showrooms, and it was really excellent. But the company was not ready for it, and it was done within the digital transformation department I was in, and everybody in that department was really convinced this is the way we should do this. But in the end, you always rely on the directors that make the decisions, and they were just a step too far for them. So when Michael left and my team lead left after 3 months when I joined, I became that lone wolf, and I was just trying to take really small steps to make it happen in the end. And it took 1 year. So there was a 1 year delay before that happened. And that's because we were working in a silo again and not talking with everybody in all departments. So you need a representative of every department that could be interesting. So not only marketing. And also within marketing, you have the silos. Because if you ask a traditional marketer to create an email, he writes a really long text with great tone of voice. And if you ask an email marketer to create an email, it will probably be text, good call to actions, and a lot of visuals. So you always have the discussion we versus them. And we versus them in this case is the digital online marketeers versus more traditional marketeers. And that I've seen that in the countries, companies I work with, it happens all the time.
Yeah, but it's not traditional versus digital marketeers, I think. It's always when you separate people and give them different missions, you have to weave for them. So what I was saying, the moving around, I don't do that to bully people. I do that to make people see that cooperation is a great way of achieving more things. And they start to see that right now as well. Our marketing analytics team lead had never properly CRM. That's really funny, because and they just see a lot of their potential to become. So I think it's working right now.
Yeah, I think it's extremely. I recognize the versus them a lot. We had issues of commerce versus brand organization. There was a revenue target to send pictures and brand awareness stuff. Do we know if it works? We don't really know. But as soon as the brand team were given also a revenue goal, or merged the goals between the two teams and they were starting working together, it was a totally different story. So I really agree with you that the vision and having a leadership, putting people in the same room and working together is really important. But I'd like to open up for maybe one or two quick questions so that our panelists can answer for burning questions from the audience. Yeah.
Ivan Schwarz from Education. I was really interested about your emerging IT marketing. I would like to know how long was the process to integrate both teams until it worked properly together?
We're probably still in it, I'd say. We merged in April last year, and I can definitely say we've seen the successes from it already. Like those admission kiosks, you know, we have seen, and we've seen direct impact for the business. But I think it's still an ongoing chain. You know, in the first month it was still Merlin IT and Merlin marketing. You know, they and us, and they, and I think that kind of has stopped probably after around 6 months. So even like in the heads of people, that does take time to know out of a Merlin digital team rather than Merlin IT. But yeah, I've no doubt that I think within this year, you know, people have forgotten that there used to be IT.
Just a second question following. Did you have an over average turnover of people during that period or not?
No, we didn't. No. No, didn't see much. We had slight changes on top. So we now have a Chief Information and Marketing Officer, which probably not a company in the world has. But so, you know, that was a change from the top, which was interesting. So slightly different focuses within the business, but no big turnover, no.
We have a question also, Della.
I have a not very controversial question. I've been watching teams being built in brands over the years and everything else. One of the things about this is an email conference, and that's a multi-channel panel, right? One of the reasons or things that I hypothesize about challenges we have is email people do too much. They won't let go. They are not prepared to fail. They'll be there on Christmas Eve or Christmas Day sending out the email. No other department does that. Do you not think that desire to not let the company down is really strong in the email department, and that could be one of the reasons why that multi-channel isn't as effective as it could be?
I don't have that opinion. Yes, my email team is working really hard, but so does the PPC team. So do the BI guys. So I don't see that difference. It's really funny because I think most of the email teams are being stimulated to send a lot of emails because a lot of emails will get a lot of revenue. And most of the email teams are completely blind to how much problems in the funnel they can solve by really being smart. And that is obviously a very actual problem, and you see more and more companies trying to do that. But I think we're halfway there. So I don't necessarily agree with your statement. No. Nothing to add.
I think it's an interesting question because I do recognize the email team working hard. So I understand where you're coming from. I actually think from my previous experience that email teams have a huge advantage in calendaring. A lot of other teams not necessarily have. So they are the starting point of working together, get all the teams working towards the right consumer experience. So I think they are very important to be the core of the team. But I did the social team being late up in the night for sending out the tweets and the shoe just launched and whatnot, and be ready for it while emails could just schedule it. So it was an interesting balance at the same time. But I do think that email teams have a huge core role in the cross-channel world. Any other questions?
Okay, thanks guys.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.